Hey everyone, it's Natalie. I know I haven't uploaded anything in a while like I intended to. Things have been really crazy with work and life and personal life and stuff like that. And I haven't really had a chance to slow down. So maybe I can actually pump out some content. What I wanted to do for a video that I thought would be helpful for is to get some questions that people might not normally know the answer to or might not know how to ask or approach. And answer some of those here. So I'm aware that for almost everybody in my personal life, I am the first trans person, male or female, that they've ever met. And for a lot of people, they tend to ask a bunch of questions of the first person they met as kind of the ambassador to that community. And while normally I believe that people should kind of do their own research with getting that kind of stuff out there, I realize that it's hard and some people don't know where to start. So I reached out, I posted on Instagram, Snapchat, the Facebooks, a couple other lines thrown out there, asking, hey, throw me some questions. I'll answer some, I'll do a video. Hopefully it'll be fun. And I got 3 responses. So the rest of y'all gotta step your game up. The 3 that asked were actually really respectful, and they asked several questions each. So what I'm gonna end up doing is going through in order with each of those, and I'll hit each point. I'm actually going to put the questions on screen and read them directly so that I'm reading them verbatim. I don't end up actually missing some parts or misinterpreting something. And then we'll see how that goes. All right, question number 1. How does your job handle your transition, and what about past students? Are you still interested in women? If it's men you're interested in, how do you approach the topic of transitioning? Sorry, it's so many questions. I just want to be knowledgeable. I actually had more than one person ask about how job handles transition, so I'm going to scooch this part off to the side and we'll come back to it in a little bit. Are you still interested in women? So this is actually one that I get a lot. I've gotten several times, usually from girls. And let's go ahead and get something out of the way. The quick starting point is that gender and sexuality are 2 entirely different things. A lot of women who are trans are interested in men, but I think it's kind of to the point where most people think that that's what's expected. I don't know if that comes from the fact that for a lot of women, they just think, okay, being interested in men is the default. I don't know if it's that a lot of trans women obviously are more feminine in their presentation, which when they're early on in transition can be perceived as a gay male and things like that. I also don't know if it's a lot of trans women when they're younger. Many people think that they are gay as a starting point, so they may start life perceiving themselves and presenting themselves as a gay male, and then at some point transitioning and being a trans woman who is interested in men. But in either way, the short part of it is, yes, I am still interested in women exclusively. That's never changed. If I was going to come out as liking men, it's something that I would have done a long time ago, before I even knew this about myself. If it's men you're interested in, I don't know if this and the next part were meant to be part of the same sentence or not. Like, if it's men you're interested in, how do you approach the topic? Or just in general, how do you approach the topic? So I'm gonna hit both real quick. So with other people, it feels, well, first and foremost, with most people that I meet in person, I feel like it's pretty straightforward that I'm trans right off the bat. I don't always wish that would be the case, and not that there's anything wrong with being visibly trans. I know a lot of trans people worry about passing, though. It just depends on who you are. There's nothing wrong with not being passable as cis or things like that. But in general, I don't think in person, that's really a topic that ends up coming up because I think most people probably get that. With people I know online, it can be a little more difficult. Most people don't care, but I also haven't done a lot of dating in the last while, and especially since coming out, because it's a whole new thing I've got to work on approaching. In general, how do I approach the topic of transitioning? Some people are more comfortable talking about it than others. I am way more comfortable talking about it with some people than others. That's probably obvious. As long as you are respectful in what you ask to me, I'm usually okay in responding respectfully to you. Just obviously you don't ask random strangers about their genitals, so don't ask me about my genitals, and so on. All right, second question. I would be interested to know more about your work environment. How has transitioning changed, how transitioning is or how it will change your work life, especially teaching. My dad was a teacher for 30 years and I know how administrators and students can be. And to tie in with the last question we had, how does your job handle your transition? So let's throw these all together. How does your job handle your transition? What about past students? For those that don't know, I'm a teacher. You probably gathered that from the questions. Or I was a teacher actually when this happened. And actually during this last year that I was teaching, I was presenting as male at work for the entire school year. So it was a hell of a topic to bring up. But as for students and past students, I actually changed my name legally during the last school year. A couple months ago is when it went through officially, in April. And while I didn't approach it by telling them ahead of time, later in the week I actually ended up, or the next week, I ended up just kind of taking every class for the last 5 minutes or so and saying, okay guys, hey, just as a quick heads up, because this is going to come out somehow, whether you see it in an email or whether you see it on a signature, whether you hear rumors spreading, and I want to get this out ahead of time. The reason I wasn't here the other day was because I had a legal name change, and at that point they're all very confused. And then, of course, the next question is, well, what did you change your name to? And usually when I tell them my new legal name is Natalie, middle name, last name, for most of them it clicks right away. For some of them it doesn't, and that's fine. I didn't like outright saying the word because I'm trans. Like, some people get weird about it, but most people can connect the dots on their own just fine. If students ended up being interested, they would ask questions. I might show them like, oh, well, this is actually how I dress outside of work and things like that. This isn't what I look like. And I think for a lot of people, for a lot of them, it was really helpful. I know for a fact that some were uncomfortable, and I'm sorry about that, but I felt like, it was way more important for those that were maybe closeted or questioning or any of that kind of thing. Just to know that there was another adult in the building that was like them. I actually, from one of my students, got a 2-page handwritten letter after I came out, and it was the sweetest thing. It made all the difference to me. I still have it. It's sitting on my dresser. I'm gonna keep it forever. You know who you are. Thank you so much. I taught in a public high school in the state of Georgia, which for anybody who's watching outside of Georgia, it's not as bad as you'd think, at least for where I was. It was actually a pretty nice, well-off area. As far as teachers go, I only told the 2 teachers initially that I was co-teaching for the year with, kind of back and forth. We taught most classes together. A little while after my name changed, I just sent out a quick email that's like, hey, my email address is still gonna be the same, but you're gonna see different things on here for the name. If you see this new name, it's still me. Don't get confused. That way it doesn't seem like I'm talking about my personal life, any of that kind of thing. The administration, for the most part, was fine with it. They just said, you can't take up class time talking about this, but we still like having you here and all that kind of thing. So it didn't negatively impact my performance as a teacher, although it made things a lot more complicated, and my mental health kind of was stressed while teaching as a result, especially because I was presenting male. And so actually at the end of this year, I did leave teaching. Now, how transitioning will change your work life? It does make things a little more daunting as far, oh, the camera's wiggling a little bit here. Stop, slow, and, oh, I hope we're good. If this is wobbling the whole time, I'm gonna feel bad. How it will change my work life? It's definitely more daunting doing things like sending out resumes or interviewing at places, but hopefully, we'll see from here. All right, last question. This is so awesome. Thank you. Okay, I have 2 questions to submit. 1, at what point did you find true happiness after coming out as a woman? I hope I'm using proper terminology. If not, I apologize. I guess 1A would be, is it more proper to say after transitioning or coming out as a woman? I'm sure there are better ways to ask. This is actually a really good question for multiple reasons. So let's break it down. I think it kind of depends from person to person. After coming out is a pretty straightforward way to say it. It's a good broad term for any kind of LGBT, coming out. So it works with trans folks as well. I personally say things like, before I transitioned, or ever since I've transitioned, blah, 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 which is kind of a misdirect because I'm still transitioning and I'm going to be for a long time. It's not really a one and done process. For a lot of people, it depends. It's not a set timeline. Some people may take hormones, some people may never take hormones, some people may do surgery, some may not, some may do nothing. Right? They may just start changing the way they dress and say, this is me now. Other people may go through some other stuff. So even though transition is something that goes on and continues, I still say, since I've transitioned, even though I'm still doing it, it doesn't really matter to me. But the easiest way would probably be to say either after coming out or after you started transitioning. So that being said, at what point did you find true happiness after coming out as a woman? Oh God, this one is really hard, actually. I don't know for sure, because it comes in waves. There's things that are great, there are things that are terrible, and they may be back to back in the same evening. It's hard to say. I think probably the first time, or second time, that I really went out in a group, which was absolutely terrifying. I was scared to leave my apartment, I was scared at the restaurant, I was scared afterwards, but everything turned out great, and the way people perceived me was different, the way that I felt was different. As far as true happiness goes, it's still easier said than done, but as far as realizing, like, yes, this is it, this is what I want to feel like, this is what I was supposed to feel like, that kind of euphoria. Probably that second time that I really went out. If not that, it's the little first things. I think those are the moments that really hit you the hardest, or that stick in your memory. I still remember the first time I was called ma'am. I still remember the first time that a sibling of mine called me sister instead of brother. Things like that, I think, are really the big ones that kind of stick with you and make you realize that it's worth it, or that you're doing the right thing. Gosh, this is such a complicated question. At what point did you find true happiness? It definitely wasn't as soon as I figured out I was trans, because I was fucking terrified. But I think since then, little individual stuff is really what makes the difference. Being around people who immediately nothing changes in the way that they treat you on the surface, but the little recognitions and things like that, where maybe even if you don't look remotely feminine at the time, people still call you ma'am, or refer to you as like her and things like that. Finding the right people, I think. Not that I didn't get a ton of support and love from everybody, but I think being around that group that affirms it so hard, if you can find that early on in your transition, it makes all the difference. That's, I think, the point where I realized this is it. I've rambled on way too hard on this question. I'm so sorry, you guys. Second question, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I'm gonna be honest, I never really thought 10 years down the road at any point in my life. When I was in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do for college. When I was in college for the first while, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a living. Right now, it's hard to answer that question. And mostly just because life is crazy unpredictable. I don't want for this to be like some big, like, existential kind of thing. But hopefully, you know, 10 years down the line, I'll have enough money to be able to support myself. I don't need to be rich. I just need to be content and happy. I would love to have knocked out a lot more of the little milestones that I think would help me a lot in the way to feeling how I want to feel altogether. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. I've changed a lot in the last year or so, but there's still a really long way to go. And I would hope that 10 times longer than last year, I'll be content and settled. But then again, 10 years from now, I'd be almost turning 40. I hope I'm good by then. If I'm not, I'm just gonna fuck off to some random island, all right? Just in the middle of nowhere, just fuck off into the Arctic Sea with a bunch of puffins or something and just live out the rest of my days there. That's it, I'm good. So that's my retirement plan, because millennial. I wish I had more questions to answer. I'm probably already running a little long because I tend to ramble. Sorry about that. If this was helpful, please leave a comment below. Let me know if you have any other questions. If this reminded you of anything you wanted to ask or to say, please feel free to leave them down below or to send them a message to me or something like that. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, actually would be great. I would love for more people to have their questions answered, to see if there's anything that they gain from this. But again, thank you so much for sending these in. I really loved it. Bye everyone!